Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited for today's webinar and to hear from our speaker, Stan Phelps. I want to quickly introduce a couple of notes, housekeeping items. And so to get started, we'd like to thank our chapter sponsors, Culture Connect, Another Brilliant Idea, and BBK Law. We really appreciate their support for our chapter. Additionally, because we are virtual and right now we can't have any in-person events during the COVID-19 situation, we are having webinars and we are trying to keep our programming ongoing on a monthly basis. The American Marketing Association Inland Empire Chapter's vision is to be the premier marketing authority in the Inland Empire to help advance and empower local marketing professionals and organizations. So I'd like to share some friendly faces. I'm not sure if you've been to our events before, but this is the board of directors that are currently helping to continue our efforts within our chapter. And as soon as everything reopens up and it's safe to come out, we hope that you can join our events in the future, join us online, and we're also happy to connect via social channels if you have any questions about our chapter activities, the AMA in general. And we really appreciate you joining us whenever you can. This webinar is also being recorded. So if you have to jump out any time, feel free to catch up on the webinar at a later date. Or if you are watching this at a different time, we appreciate you watching our content and we hope to meet you soon. So please feel free to chat in the dialogue box, or if you have any questions, please post your questions. Stan will be happy to answer any questions after or for follow-up. So without further ado, Stan Phelps is our speaker for today. Thank you, Stan, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Yeah, of course. And Stan is the founder of Purple Goldfish. Stan is a TEDx speaker, Forbes contributor, IBM futurist, and certified speaking professional that focuses on customer experience and employee engagement. Throughout his career, Stan has held many marketing leadership roles with Adidas International Management Group, PGA of America, and Synergy, and is the author of many great books. So Stan, without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and let you get on with your presentation. And thank you again so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria, and thank you everyone for coming out. I am coming to you today from a place called the Frontier, which is in North Carolina. I live in an area that's called the Research Triangle Park, which is otherwise referred to as the Triangle for Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Little bit of trivia. I'm not from. You're not going to see a really strong Southern accent. I'm not from North Carolina originally. I grew up in the northeastern part of the U.S., but 8 years ago I moved here with my family to North Carolina. And I always love to share this. If anyone's a fan of HGTV that's listening right now, when my family made the move, we did the show House Hunters. And I always tell people kiddingly, I learned very quickly that there's not a lot of reality in reality television. Today, excited to share a little bit about the 10th color in the series. It's called the Silver Goldfish. I was lucky enough 2 years ago, I believe I was in Riverside, I got a chance to share the pink goldfish with AMA Inland Empire, so I'm glad to be back. So you're thinking to yourself, you're like, what's this goldfish preoccupation? So let's start with why a goldfish. So the goldfish is, if everybody, do me a favor in the chat right now, remember back to when you grew up. What was your very own first pet? And I want you to type that into the chat. Maria, I'm going to have you unmute yourself and put you on the spot.
Yes, of course.
So it was for you as a dog?
Yes, for me it was a dog.
Okay, got you. Remember, what was the dog's name?
My dog's name was Wishbone.
Okay, we got a lot of dog people, by the way. I'm seeing
Yes.
hamster from D, a little miniature schnauzer from Nathan. I love it. A dachshund. All right. Awesome. No cat people on so far. Come on, no cat people. Oh, I love this, Cindy. You're in my crowd. Yeah, goldfish. Okay, Christine, we've got a cat. Okay, so for me, it happened when this is me when I was 6 years old. I always like to do this. I had a lot more hair back then, not so much right now. But my very own first pet was a goldfish. I'll never forget it. I went to like a spring carnival and I threw the ping pong ball and I came home with my very own first pet when I was 6. His name was Oscar. And I remember Oscar was pretty small. In fact, goldfish on average only get to be 3 inches in length. So if you can imagine that, if everybody holds up their thumb right now, the average person's thumb, thank you, Maria, for being my model, is 3 inches. But if you had to guess, and we'll take guesses in the chat, if you had to guess what the world's largest goldfish is, and don't look it up on Guinness, but if you had to guess with not a koi and not like a carp, average ordinary goldfish, some grow to just be 2 inches, but some grow to be bigger. If you had to guess, D has got 10 inches, so that's good, but much bigger than that, D. 2 feet, all right, this is like wisdom of the crowd, 3 feet. Okay, if you kind of split the difference, you're looking at it right here. So the largest goldfish in the world is nearly 20 inches. So think about that for a second. Some only grow to be the size of your thumb and some grow to be about 20 inches. That's the size of an average domesticated house cat. Like, how is that even possible? That would be like walking out of your house or your apartment this morning, right? And bumping into somebody who's 3 stories tall, 6 times your size. So how is that even possible? Well, it turns out that for a goldfish, their growth is determined by 5 things. But here's the thing. Every person on this webinar right now, both for their career and for the business that they're in, are impacted by the same 5 factors. And so we're going to break down the 5 factors. We'll have a little fun with this. Here's the first one. And most people have heard this about a goldfish before, right? The size of the bowl or the pond that they're in will determine ultimately how big they get. So this is a direct correlation. The bigger the bowl, the bigger the pond, the bigger the goldfish will grow. So put this in the chat if you think you know the answer to this. What's the size? What's the equivalent of the size of the bowl or the pond if you're in business or for your career? Let's see if anybody has a guess on this. What's the equivalent of the bowl or the pond? Okay, Lisa got it. Size of the network. Great. How about from a business and marketing construct? What do you think the size of what? The size, D's got it. The size of the market is actually what we're looking for, right? So it makes sense. The bigger the market that you serve, the more you can grow, right? So even for your career, right, depending upon the size of the job, the market for the types of jobs you're going for, that's going to impact your growth. Now here's number 2. You're also impacted by who? The amount of other goldfish that are in the bowl or the pond. So for a goldfish, the less goldfish that there are, the bigger they get. This one's an inverse relationship. So in business, this is the easiest one ever. Type it in there if you know it. Who are the other goldfish if you're in business? Dee's got it, and Cindy's got it. Great. It's your competition, right? And it makes sense. The less competition you have, the more you can grow. The more crowded the market is with competition, the harder it's going to be to grow. All right. Third one is relevant to where we are right now, but it's the hardest one to get. Because their growth is also impacted by what? Their growth is also impacted by the quality of their surroundings, right? And the environment that they're in. So the more nutrients in the water, the less cloudy the water is, the more they typically grow. So I want you to think kind of macro here. What do you think that surrounding environment is right now? Type that in the chat if you think you know. Maria's got it. It's the economy, right? And I don't have to tell anybody of that right now. You know, we're facing upwards of 30% unemployment, historic levels of, you know, it's a difficult time. People are not going out. It's, you know, this is a difficult time in terms of consumer confidence. So exactly, the quality of the water, and my slides just went out. Let me start those again. 1 second.
No worries. This
Yeah.
is the show. We are live.
So you can see my kids in the background here. We're gonna get this going again here in a second. Give me one.
Yes, it isn't a live webinar without some technical.
There you go. So just to continue really quickly, we're talking about the economy, and it makes sense, right? I don't have to tell you right now with the global pandemic how much of an issue that is. So here we go. So the fourth element, if you're a goldfish, is how you do your first 4 months of life. So how you do getting out the gate. And here's the thing, goldfish when they're born are tiny, they're minuscule. In fact, you call a baby goldfish a fry, as in small fry, because they're tiny. So how they do in that critical time is absolutely key. So in business, what do you call your first 4 months of life? Let's see if anybody can get launch. Lisa, you got it. Maria, you got it. You're a startup. Or if you launch a new product or service, how it does in this critical time will be a key to how big it will ultimately get. It makes sense. Here is number 5. Genetic makeup. So what is that goldfish born with that separates it from all of the other goldfish? And the more that they're separated and the stronger that their genes are, the more they typically grow. If their genes are weak and they're like everyone else, the harder it's going to be for them to grow. So in business, what do you think genetic makeup is with regard to either your career or your product or service that you're offering? It's what? Maria's got it again. I think Maria's been in one of these presentations before.
I promise I have not seen this presentation before, and I don't have the answers.
No problem. It's the D word. It's differentiation, right? How do you stand out in what I would call a sea of sameness, right? Your ability to stand out and be different. Now, here's the challenge. I mentioned there's 5 things: market, competition, economy, startup, and differentiation. Let's assume you've already been in business for more than 4 months. What's the only thing here that you have control over? Or for your career? Does anyone have control over the market? No. How about your competition? Not unless you're buying them. Does anyone on this call have control over the economy? Please see me after this webinar. That would be great if you do. Right? The only thing you have control over is that last one. It's how you differentiate what you do, and more importantly, how you do it. And so we're going to talk about in terms of your ability to communicate and present as the thing that can set you apart in business and in terms of your career. Now, here's the challenge, is that there is a huge myth when it comes to when we communicate and we present. And the biggest myth of communication is simply this: it's the illusion that it has actually taken place. All right, so you've given a presentation, you might have finished, people might have patted you on the back and said, great job, but really, did they understand the key message? Were you able to communicate in a way that was memorable and distinctive? Were you able to achieve what you set out to? Many times, it actually doesn't happen. All right, so we're gonna play a fun game here. Got to present virtually. You got to keep it fun, right? Especially when you're slide. That's never happened to me before. Well, maybe once or twice. The slides have an issue. But we're gonna play. Do you remember playing this as a kid? Two truths and a lie. So I'm going to give you 3 statements, and you've got to tell me which one is the lie out of the 3. So the first one is, the statement is, the fear of speaking and presenting is actually greater than what? The fear of dying. That's the first statement. The second one's actually a quote. Here you go. Let me see. A quote. One sec. Let me go over here. Quote from this guy right here, Mark Twain. Mark Twain, true or false, he said there's only 2 types of speakers in this world. He said, 1, those that are nervous, and 2, those that are liars. All right? And here's number 3. Here's the deal. Some people are born a presenter. They've got a silver tongue. They've got the gift. And sorry, but they're just born with it, right? Now, let's see in the chat. Which one do you think? Just write the number in the chat. 1 was the fear of speaking and presenting is actually greater than the fear of dying. Did Mark Twain say there's only 2 types of speakers in the world, the nervous and the liars? And 3 is some people are just born presenters. All right, so I'm seeing that 3, everyone's agreeing. Oh God, everyone's saying 3. All right, we've got Risa and Sharonda. I love you guys because you're being different. Risa says number 1. So number 1 is actually a truth. The fear of speaking and presenting, it's actually called glossophobia. Glossophobia is actually greater than the fear of dying. In fact, Jerry Seinfeld once brilliantly said, how is that even possible? That means if you went to a funeral, whoops, let me do this. He said that means if you went to a funeral, he says more people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Right? It doesn't make sense. All right. Sharonda, you said number 2. Actually, that is actually a true quote by Mark Twain, that there's only 2 types of speakers, the nervous and the liars. And that's a true statement because physiologically, our brain is always trying to detect threats. That's millions of years of biology. And what happens when we get up to present, our body senses a threat, not to actually our life, but to our identity. And because we feel a threat to our identity, the primitive part of our brain starts to increase our heart rate. It starts to affect our breathing. It even makes our sweat glands get initiated. And it's impossible not to be nervous when you present. Now, most of you had number 3, and number 3 is actually the lie. So great job. Most of you were on it. No one is born a presenter. And so that is both a blessing and a curse, because there's nothing in your genes that makes you a better presenter and communicator. And there's no pill that you can take that can magically make you better. It's merely, the blessing is it's just merely a skill that you can get better at. All right, so I shared a little bit of the background on why a goldfish. That was all about being different and growing through being different. Now, why silver in the silver goldfish? So the silver is a tribute to my late father. This is a picture of my dad, John Phelps. He passed away 5 summers ago. He almost reached 86. Long life, amazing life, but he's no longer with us. It's a tribute to my dad because when he was at the age of 18, he went into the service. And in 1948, he went to a thing called the U.S. Signal Corps School in New Jersey. And the Signal Corps is the part of the military that supports all of the different branches with communication. And so my dad studied being a radio operator and a radio repairman. And when you studied that, you were always trying to study the ability to be able to communicate, especially through radio. So when they tried to measure the strength of that communication, they did it on 2 things: strength and readability. And they had a scale that was 1 to 5. First, they were judging the strength or the volume. And then they were also judging the readability of the signal for clarity. And 5 was the best and 1 was the worst. So where you wanted to be was up here in the top right. And if they went over the radio and they said, "How am I coming through?" If you were coming through perfectly on the other end, the response was always, "You're coming through 5 by 5. 5 by 5. Now, we may have never heard of 5 by 5 before, but we have heard loud and clear, right? Loud and clear. So when we speak and present, the volume piece, the loud piece, is not about the volume of your voice. It's merely about the ability to rise above distractions, right? The ability to engage the audience and keep their attention. Now, here's the thing, especially when we're doing now a lot of virtual presentations, your ability to keep somebody's attention is absolutely critical. That's the volume piece, rising above distraction, connecting and engaging with the audience. The clarity piece is more about how you organize your message, right? And you want to organize your message in a way that it comes across very clear and rememberable. Rememberable. So that's the clarity piece. Now, I'm going to share the solution, and what we cover in the book is this idea that there are 5 ways that you need to come across loud and 5 ways that you need to come across clear. And they make up the 10 keys of delivering a memorable presentation. But if you learn nothing else today, I'm going to tell you the greatest tip that's going to make you a great presenter. Maria, unmute for a second.
Sure.
Maria, are you ready for the greatest tip that's going to make you an amazing presenter?
Yes, I want to be an amazing, memorable presenter. I personally tend to have a low tone when I present, so I'm excited to hear how I can come across loud, clear, memorable.
Right. And again, we'll talk about tone and how you vary your voice, but it's not about just coming across loud. It's about connecting and engaging, right? So here is the greatest tip. I want everyone to write these 4 letters down. Maria, this is my tip to you. I want you to stop. No, I actually don't want you to stop presenting, but stop it's an acronym for this. And so do me a favor, if you get a chance to write this down, the S is for single, the T is for thought, the O is for one, and the P is for person. Single thought, one person. And the idea with this tip is that when you present, sometimes we get so wrapped up in what we're going to say next that we can't stay present and communicate our current thought. So how stop works is I would look at Maria right now, and I would just deliver a single thought to Maria. Now I cannot start again till I engage somebody else in the audience or sitting at the table. And I would deliver a single thought to that one person. And then I engage another person, and I deliver a single thought to that one person. Now, Maria, what do you think happens when there's a little bit of a space, right, between those thoughts?
Yes, a pause.
A pause. What happens, do you think, during those moments of pause?
I would say someone has a time to process what they just heard.
Right, right. You can only either process or you can listen. And so if I've said something important and I went right on to the next thing, what have I robbed you of the ability to do?
Right, to really hear, listen.
To process it and think about it and let it sink in. Now, for me as a presenter, what happens if I can stay in the moment and deliver that one thought? That pause does something very important for me. It allows me to what? Breathe, right? Which gets me a little calmer. It also allows me to think about what I'm going to say next. And this is the biggest benefit. When we're presenting, for the most part, no one is interrupting us. So there's no reason why we have to finish a statement and say, and, so, or any other filler word that we come up with. So creating that space eliminates all of those filler words, allows us the chance to breathe, and gives us a much better cadence for the audience. Does that make sense to you, Maria?
Yes, it does.
All right, then I want you to stop then, okay?
I will. All
right, here's my homework for Maria. Maria, I want you, next time you're in the car and you're listening to the radio and it's not music, but it's an interview. It could be a news channel, it could be sports radio. Listen to an interview between an athlete, especially a rookie, and an on-air personality or a member of the public and that on-air personality. And you will notice that that on-air personality never has one filler word. All right, they're clear in how they communicate. All right, so stop. So I'm going to give you 5 more tips as it relates to 5 elements of being loud, and then quickly I'm going to do 5 for being clear, and then we're going to open it up to questions and comments. So feel free as we go through, if you have a question, feel free to throw it in the Q&A if you can. You can also put it in the chat, but sometimes the chat moves and I might miss it. I'll have Maria keep her eyes on it for me. So, and then I'm going to finish with a little bit of a story and kind of a final thought and a tool that you can use going forward that we'll get to everyone. All right, let's start with the first element of being loud is what we call the ability to impress. Now, here's the thing. When you're presenting, people are making impressions of you before the first word comes out of your mouth. And many times, what are they looking at? They're looking at, you're looking at my, there's my goldfish right here, my silver goldfish. You're looking at how they're dressed, right? And so here's the thing, you want to dress to impress. And the idea of dressing to the nines is this idea of making sure that you're your professional best. Now, you want to essentially dress to the audience that you're speaking to, or just a little maybe better than the way the audience is. So know your audience of who you're presenting to. That's the first element of being loud. The second is the ability to connect. Now, you can get up in a presentation and give all sorts of great facts and figures and statistics, and an hour later, people are going to remember nothing. As human beings, how do we remember things? We remember things through stories. So being able to start with a great story, maybe something that's personal, to share a challenge you might have had, how you overcame it, that's how we remember information as human beings. So facts tell, stories sell. That's my friend Brian Eisenberg's great quote. Number 3 is this idea of expressing and being present in the moment. Now, this is a study by a guy by the name of Morabian. Morabian said that we have to understand that when we communicate, especially if it's something about feeling, that only 7% of what we communicate are the words that we actually use. Maria, what's the remainder if you had to guess? People can put this in the chat too. If 7% are the words, what makes up the other 93% if you're communicating something with feeling?
Your emotions, your hands, language.
Your gestures. So your gestures are 55% of what you communicate. That's great. So Sharonda's on that as well. And then Nathan and Dee have got the other pit. The other 38% is the tone of your voice and how you may lift it up or down. So the key is you want to be able to, especially when it's something with feeling, you want to make sure you're going big. Because here's the thing, if I make a big gesture and I feel like on a scale of 1 to 10 that it's a 10, Maria most probably, when Maria looks at it, if she's being honest, she would say, maybe that's like a 6 or a 7, right? So you actually have to go much bigger than what you feel. You know, let the elbows fly a little bit. And with regard to your tone, sometimes you have to be a little more animated. And maybe if I'm sharing something personal about myself, maybe I need to take it down a notch or two. So know that when you communicate feeling, it's more than just the words that you use. Number 4, facilitate, meaning how do you handle things while you present? Because here's the thing, things are going to go wrong, just like my slides went out when I was presenting and I had to do it. The other thing is I have to do like jumping jacks in here, by the way. 1 second. My lights are on there we go, or on like a timer there. So here's the thing, when you're facilitating, do me a favor, if you're gonna do questions, don't do your questions just at the end, right? Because we're marketers here on this webinar, right? We know that people remember the first thing that they hear and the last thing that they hear. It's primacy and recency. And the last thing you want your audience to hear is, oh, I'm sorry, there's no more questions. Like, that's not the way to finish strong. So the tip here for facilitation is that if you do Q&A, right, make sure you do it before you end with a final story and a call to action when you present. Number 5, and the 5th one, is this idea of entertaining. Now, entertaining, not like being an actor, but entertaining means you have to make sure that you keep the audience's attention. And how our brain works as human beings is that every 10 minutes, if things don't change up, what does our brain do? It shuts down, right? And so if you're not mixing things up when you present at least every 8 to 10 minutes, you're going to lose your audience. And so let me ask in the chat right now, what are some of the ways that you could mix it up when you present to reset the audience and keep their attention? Polls, I love that. Marie says polls, that's awesome. Survey, I love that from D. An interactive exercise. Nathan, I love you, man. Chocolate bars, yes, that will get people's attention. Sometimes I will give out my little mini books, or we'll play a Q&A with the audience, right? You could have them do an exercise. I love the survey. All great stuff there. I'm not sure what a tuning contest is. Okay, gotcha. Running a contest. Okay, gotcha. I didn't know if you actually wanted them to run. D, thank you for that. Cold calling. Yeah, you can call people. Here's the thing. You could play a video. You could do a table or group exercise. You could ask an open-ended question. What's the takeaway, though? Every 10 minutes, you need to mix it up, right? If you want to keep their attention. So that was the 5 elements of being loud. We talked impress, we talked connect, express, facilitate, and entertain. Now let's talk about the clarity piece, all right? The first one is you want to be clear. You have to have an objective for your presentation. What are you trying to achieve? What's the one thing? Does anybody remember what's the name of this movie, by the way? That's Jack Palance, who was Curly. Is this too old of a movie for you, Maria? Do you remember this?
I don't recognize it.
You don't recognize it. Billy Crystal was in it. City Slickers, thank you, Nathan. Yes. So Billy Crystal, they're on like a cattle drive in like Wyoming. And this is Jack Palance is this grizzled old cowboy. And Billy Crystal says, you know, he's asking him about the key to life. And Curly looks at him, he says, it's just one thing. And Billy Crystal gets all excited. Whoa, what's the one thing? And he says to him, he says, that's for you to figure out. You have to figure out your one thing. But that's your objective when you speak. You want to make sure that you know what's the central idea that you're trying to communicate. For this presentation, it's all about, if you don't remember anything else, it's about being loud and clear, right? Rising above distraction to engage the audience, and then being clear with your message so a way that it's rememberable, right? Number 7, the second type of being clear is that you want to simplify things in a way that your audience can remember what you're telling them. So here's the thing, and I'm actually not doing a very good job of it, because in this book there are 10 keys. Really, I should probably minimize the amount I'm sharing with you. But if you had, I'll put Maria on the spot. Maria, if you were giving a presentation, how many kind of main messages ideally would you want to share? What do you think the magic number is?
3-point rule. 3 points, 3 key takeaways.
You are right. What's the magic number? 3 is the magic number. I bet Nathan remembers that. Schoolhouse Rock, does everybody remember that? 3? It's the magic number. Yes, it is. So here's the thing. Do things in 3s. Like, great example, I'm going to give you a 3s for how you outline your presentation. Okay? When you think about outlining your presentation, that's the next part of being clear. I want you to divide your time in 3 equal parts. The first part is what we call sketching. And this is the idea of, with a blank piece of paper like analog, right? Or I guess you could sketch and take digital notes, but really write down all of your ideas, how you want to start, like the main points you're going to cover. And I'm going to give you a great tool for that. But the first third of your time is sketching. The second part of this third is this. How do you organize and illustrate your message? So it could be slides. It could be this is my favorite prop right here. It could be a prop that you use. No. This is my second favorite prop, bobblehead stand. Anyhow, it could be a whiteboard, but how are you going to leverage the environment to be able to support your message? And the last third of your time that you want to dedicate is to what? Practicing and rehearsing and learning your presentation. All right, number 9 is visualize. So how do you leverage visuals to support what you're communicating? And here's the thing, visuals are extremely important. If I just told Maria something that's important right now, the chances that she remembers it a week from now is 10%, right? That's horrible. 90% you're going to forget. Maybe you remember 10%. But here's the thing. If I'm going to share this tip with Maria in a second. If I can put a compelling visual against it, that 10% jumps to 65%. Because not only has she heard it, she's seen it as well. And that's called dual coding. When you hear and you see, you now have two things. It's more sticky. So here's the tip when you use visuals not only do you want to use great visuals, but where do you want to place the emphasis of your visual? And this is a photographer trick. It's called the rule of thirds. And how it works is, you can see these, if you ever look through a camera and you see kind of the viewfinder, it looks like a tic-tac-toe board. Where do you want to put the emphasis of your image? Not right in the middle, right? But you want to put it at these 4 points. This is going to blow your mind, Marie. You know what these are called? They're called power points. Now you know where PowerPoint.
Now I know their secret.
Now you know. So here's the thing. When you want to place text or you want to place emphasis of an image, you want to go into one of the, because that's where our eye goes when we look. Okay? Number 10. Number 10 is about time. And here's the thing. When you're presenting, there's only one cardinal rule of presenting. It's what? It's, let me go back to that. It is finishing when? Finishing on time. There's no excuse. It doesn't matter if we started late today. It doesn't matter if I had more information to be able to share. You need to be respectful and you need to finish and close on time. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to open the Q&A. Do we have anything in there already? We don't, which is good. But feel free either in the chat or the Q&A. We're going to open it up. Actually, I don't do Q&A. What do you think the C stands for, Maria?
Conversation?
Close. Questions and comments.
Got it.
So let me ask you, Maria, what was your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway, there was quite a few things. It's definitely, for me, I haven't practiced engaging people in my presentations. I would say probably it's a little selfish, right? As a presenter, of me wanting to just share my information of what I have to communicate and not considering what the audience is taking away from it, how I can include them in the presentation to make it engaging. So those are big takeaways for myself.
Right. You know, I think sometimes you're the president now of the chapter, right? Sometimes in the beginning, you know, the goal for us is just to finish the presentation.
Right.
Like, and get through it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that shouldn't be the ultimate. We should aspire to want to have that thing that we can communicate and communicate the feeling, right, to the audience, not just the information, because we can get information anywhere.
Right.
Great. Great. So I'm getting some comments over here. I love this. So for Lisa, the biggest takeaway is stop. I love that, single thought to one person, which allows you to kind of stay in the moment and not have to think and memorize what is going to come next. Right? I love that. Got a question here from Sharonda. What are your favorite activities to do via Zoom in groups? So I love the fact that if you create exercises in Zoom, we're in a webinar right now, which is a little limiting in some aspects. I actually wish this would have been more of a meeting, so I would have been able to do the gallery view and see everyone. But the webinar doesn't allow that because it wants the focus to be selfishly on the presenter. But if I would have thought this further, I would have done a meeting. But I like the fact in meetings you can do breakouts. So if you can create exercises, Sharonda, and give people time to apply what you've just told them, that's going to become much more memorable. Plus, it's going to create some breaks in the presentation, and it's going to make it a lot more relatable for them as the attendee. Ethics says, love how you are so well organized and understandable. I appreciate that. I was not good when I started presenting. It's only a matter of really raising your hand to take the opportunities and knowing that it's a craft that you can get better at. Great. D says, I love simplification and clarification. Let's see. Love the visuals you have in the back screen. Really quickly, let me give you some other tips when it comes to visuals. One is there shouldn't be an excuse to get good visuals. And I'm going to give you a resource. It's called Pixabay.com. So let me see, I can write that in the, it is Pixabay.com. The visuals are my favorite price. You know what my favorite price is, Maria?
$3.99.
Free. They're free, which is great. And there are some other ones out there. I'm a big fan of, what's the one where you can do designing?
Canva?
Canva.
I like Canva.
I believe their images are $1.
Some are free also.
And some are free, right.
Yes.
And then you can also search for images. Wikipedia's got a lot of great images. You can do your search. So, there's always an advanced search where you can say, I only want images that I can share without, infringing on people's rights. But use the entire screen for your image. Don't make the image small. And by all means, try not to use a lot of text. Famously, if you've never heard this, guns do not kill presentations. Maria, what kills presentations?
I would say it's something that's uninteresting or boring.
Bullets.
Bullets.
Bullets kill presentations. So Cindy's on it. Yeah, too many words. Thank you, Maria, for sharing. Yeah, it's canva.com. There's no excuse not to have good visuals in the background. Limit the amount of words. Place them very strategically on the slide. So that's helpful. We might have time for one or two more questions. Go ahead.
I have a question. I work for a tech company, and the majority of times we demonstrate our technology or software via webinars. And because there is a lot to it, right, there can be so much text sometimes, text that I see. So would you recommend something in replace of that, or how can we improve upon that?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is that if you're doing a tech presentation, sometimes it's good to do a screen share and like more of a demo, right? Because that's going to be able to show how you're using it. And that's going to eliminate it's almost like you can kind of show and tell, right?
Right.
But I think that the challenge that most people have is that they use their slides as a crutch to remember what they want to say. And when we start to write full sentences on a slide, right, the challenge is that people read about 3 times faster than you can talk. So as you're reading, 1, you've turned your head. 2, you're reading. They've already read faster than you can talk. You've lost them. The pictures and maybe a few words should just be a support for what your message is. And one of the things that you can do is you can always hit the letter B on your keyboard. That actually blacks out the screen, right? Or sometimes on your clicker, you have a blackout button. That allows all of the focus to go on you so people aren't distracted. if you do feel compelled, and sometimes you have to use bullets, at least bring in the bullets one at a time, right? What you don't want is to put all 6 bullets and then somebody's read through all of them by the time you've just finished the first one.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions. Great. All right. So I mentioned I've got a couple tools. I'm going to share them with Maria after the webinar. And I think, Maria, you have the list, right? Can you send that out to everyone?
Yes, we can definitely send
Awesome.
it out to all registrants.
So 2 tools that I want to share with you. One is what we call the Silver Presentation Matrix. And that's going to give you, Silver is an acronym for how you prepare. Starting, illustrating, learning, vaulting, educating, and requesting. And there are 5 tips on each of these 6 areas, which is great. And then this one over here is called the Silver Preparation Grid. And what that allows you to do, it's just a little form that you fill in as you prepare for your presentation. You know, it asks you, what's the date and the time? What do you want what's the reason that the audience is going to listen to you? What's the one thing? And then what are your 3 key points that you're going to cover? You know, how are you going to do rehearsing and practicing? And then this is more about, so they're great tools that I think will give you confidence to prepare in a way that it's going to be a very thoughtful and rememberable presentation. So I'm going to leave you with one last quote, and then we're going to end a minute early because you always have to finish when, Maria?
On time.
Right. There's no excuse. No excuse for you. So the quote here is from, they call him the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, right? So I think it's pretty important that you should become a great presenter, but I tell people, don't take my word for it. Warren says one of the things that you want to do, whether you like it or not, is get comfortable with public speaking, right? He says it's an asset that will last you 50 or 60 years. He says it's a necessary skill. And so my hope is we finish today, you're going to invest. I could care less whether or not you buy my book or not. It is on Uncle Jeff's website, Amazon, if you want to pick it up. But do me a favor, lean in, become a student of presenting. It's the thing that will differentiate you and get you promoted and really help. I can't tell you of another thing you could do that would help you career-wise more than becoming a great communicator and presenter. So my hope is you walk away today, you are committed to coming across loud and clear. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you very much, Dan. We appreciate you and what you've given us today. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining us. Quick question, Audible. Are you on Audible?
I've got 4 of my books on Audible, Pink, Purple, Red, and Diamond. Nice. Not this one yet, though.
Coming soon.
Coming soon, yeah. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye, all. Thank you.